Report Analysis Show. I'm Drew Dinkmeyer here with Mike Gallagher to walk you through today's 9-game slate. No early game today. There will be an early game tomorrow. We'll still be on at 2 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, just as a scheduling note there. Also, as a scheduling note, the ETR NBA team will be hanging out on Playback, playback.tv/ETR tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern. If you have a League Pass subscription, you'll be able to watch alongside us as we flip channels around, focusing in on those 8 o'clock Eastern games to start in the end of games there, sweating props, DFS, end of game situations, moving to that 9 o'clock game with the Clippers in Utah, and then eventually settling in on Denver in Minnesota. But yeah, you can follow us along. Make sure you create an account, playback.tv/ETR to find our room at 10 o'clock Eastern tonight. Mike Gallagher and Chris Lafficus will start things off. I will join midway through after I get back from tennis. Mike, how are you on this fine Wednesday?
Doing good. Yeah, got matchups done last night. Got a hike in today for the first time in 10 days since I sprained my foot. Still a little discomfort. So, I'm on a minutes restriction today, but good to go. Excited for a fun little slate today. A lot of injuries, back-to-back factors. Did my G League tracking, ready to talk some injuries.
Well, no one's more excited about a Mike Gallagher minutes restriction than me, because it means I get to eat lunch earlier today. So let's get through that minutes restriction and let's get to it. Let's start with the questionable tags on this slate. Let's start with Washington, where Bradley Beal is expected back, listed questionable tonight, but the reporting is indicating that he'll be back. What are your expectations for how Washington adjusts, and should we expect any sort of minutes limitations on Bradley Beal?
Yeah, absolutely on a minutes limit. I believe it was about a week ago he got upgraded to playing full basketball activities, went through a practice, got called questionable last game, ruled out pretty quick. So it should be good. We expect around a 30 cap on him. He's had multiple hamstring injuries this season. So you would expect them to be careful with him there. Obviously, that would put him in the starting lineup, take Corey Kispert out. I think they still go with the big lineup that they've been using. Certainly makes sense in this matchup against the Knickerbockers. They've been playing pretty good defense. I think they're like top 10 in defense, and their half-court defense I think is 6th in their pretty much since that lineup started. So would expect them to continue to start big and keep Denny off the bench. Obviously, Kispert going to the bench too, as I mentioned.
Mavericks have some new questionable tags: Dorian Finney-Smith, Josh Green. They're still going to be without Tim Hardaway Jr. How do you expect? Do we see either of these guys tonight? We saw them without Luka last game on a rest situation. Do you think we see DFS or Josh Green tonight? And if so, who do you think is the starting combination they go to without Tim Hardaway Jr.?
Yeah, reports that they're expected back, so would expect Dorian Finney-Smith, who's missed multiple weeks with this adductor strain, would expect him to start. I would expect Reggie Bullock to stay in the starting lineup and put Luka as the defensive forward guarding John Collins, obviously plays point guard on offense. So I would expect the starting lineup to be Luka, Spencer Dinwiddie, Reggie Bullock, Dorian Finney-Smith, basically like it was last year. And then I would expect Christian Wood to still get the start. Certainly seems pretty comfortable there. Wouldn't be totally shocked if they bump Bullock. But I think it makes sense to have Bullock guarding Trey, Dorian Finney-Smith guarding DeJounte, and then they're pretty comfortable putting Luka on a lot of fours. So I would expect Luka to draw the John Collins matchup, which sets up pretty well for Collins if they are going to run and hunt mismatches. We know the Mavericks play a lot of hit switch heavy schemes. So I'm expecting a lot of that. Maybe John Collins finally has a good game. He's been running pretty bad lately. But Dorian's minutes get out there a lot. I mean, we see him play upper 30s all the time. Would expect a minutes cap on him. And then Josh Green elbow. So he probably doesn't have a hard cap, but he's just restricted because they've got other players. So curious to see if Josh Green's minutes affect Jaden Hardy, who's been playing a little bit more and he's kind of a rotation piece. Jason Kidd, they got to find minutes for him. So curious to see how that affects, maybe playing smaller or something along those lines. Just something to watch. Not really DFS fantasy relevant, but I want to see how Jason Kidd plays it after he said Hardy needs some minutes.
And you mentioned the potential for Reggie Bullock to maybe get slid back into the bench reserve role. Who would that be for? Would that be for Dwight Powell? Would that be for Josh Green? What's your expectation there?
Yeah, I think it would be playing big. Makes sense against the Hawks with a too big lineup. I just think that they'd rather lean into switchy defenders in this spot. So I'd play probably 70% confident that it would be the multi-wing lineup instead of the too big one.
Okay. Let's move to the Timberwolves questionables, which there's a lot on the slate once again.
Mm-hmm.
Anthony Edwards is listed questionable. Rudy Gobert is listed questionable. Taurean Prince is listed questionable. Kyle Anderson not listed on the injury report, so no worries about him. But Prince, Anthony Edwards, Rudy Gobert, still without Karl Anthony Towns, still without Jordan McLaughlin. What's your read on the Timberwolves questionables today?
Yeah, so I was wrong. I'm thinking Rudy Gobert was going to sit, but turns out I may have been right because Chris Finch said that it was, quote, being pretty tender on his groin injury. We saw him play 5 minutes and get kicked out. I don't think they want to risk him getting an aggravation here, given the way that Karl Anthony Towns is still out and they're playing Luka Garza and all that. So I think they kind of bite the bullet and start Naz Reid. I think he sits. Anthony Edwards, we've seen his usage hold up. The rebounding, which I've talked about a lot, has still been down. But he's been really aggressive. He shot almost 9 shots per game off drives. That's up for him. That puts him in the top 10 in the NBA over that span. So he is really taking it to the defense, which is really what it's at, when he's at its best. Matchup is interesting. We'll see how the Nuggets look in back-to-back. I mentioned their defensive improvements yesterday, which turned out to be true. But so I'm expecting Ant to play, Taurean Prince to play. I think Gobert sits. I really do. I don't think that they want to risk him hurting this groin any more than he has and give him, a couple days off. So would expect Naz Reid to start. We saw a lot of the small ball lineup in this last matchup. Chris Finch said he wished he went to it earlier. Certainly a horse of a different color for a man who likes horses, and Nikola Jokic. So I would expect him to play pretty big. And also worth noting, too, we saw Kyle Anderson get the Jokic matchup, which 2 things happened in this. One, Anderson popped off offensively, had a season-high 19 points. And 2, they brought a lot of help to help slow-mo. And this is with Gobert in the lineup, so a little bit different. But that opened up Aaron Gordon on the glass. Season-high 12 offensive rebounds, shot like trash, 4 of 18. So kind of a sneaky matchup for Gordon if they do employ that slow-mo on Jokic thing. So that would probably happen if Gobert's out, though. But, just thanks for watching there. So expecting Gobert to sit.
It was also just a game or two after Gordon had that wrist injury from that Christmas Day dunk. Or we assume it's from the Christmas Day
shoulder,
dunk.
yeah.
And shoulder. Was it shoulder? It was listed shoulder,
yeah.
Whatever it was. And he had the really, really terrible shooting like immediately after. Who knows if they're related or not, but it's one of those things where the defensive strategy was working, so they kept with it. But you can see like if Denver's hitting threes, bringing doubles on Jokic can be death by 3 instead of death by 2. So you could see that adjust in game depending on how it's working. Let's move to another questionable tag. LeBron James questionable tonight with that left ankle soreness. We've seen him. He's listed every game. It's either probable or questionable. I think it's notable now, at least, that there's a distinction between the two that we've seen this year, in that the probable tags he's largely played through. The questionable tags have been more hit or miss in terms of his availability. Questionable tonight, same left ankle soreness. He tweaked it again last game. It seems like he's like tweaking it like almost every game these days. What are your thoughts on LeBron's availability tonight against the Kings?
I think he's playing. But yeah, just as you noted, so the last 2 games he's missed. One time he was questionable. I called it a fake Q, and it kind of was because he got listed with an ankle, and then he had a cold, and that's why he missed. And then the second game that he missed, he had a probable tag, downgraded to Q, and then ruled out. So the probable tag has been a little more ominous than some of the questionable tags he's been playing through. So I think he's going to play in a matchup that is just so good. He's just absolutely smashing right now. So he'll see a lot of Harrison Barnes. I think it's a pretty good spot. Certainly one to wait for. But I think if he is out there, you probably get him at pretty low ownership if people are scared of that Q tag.
Yeah, it will be interesting. It's the last game on the slate, depending on when that news comes. In terms of big spends on the slate, Jokic is right before at 10 o'clock. Obviously, if you didn't play LeBron, you would still have the ability to move to guys like Sabonis or Westbrook or different combinations of players. So I think there's a chance that people start with LeBron, knowing that they can pivot to other pieces later, and his ownership kind of holds because they want the roster spot to be able to play Westbrook if LeBron is out. You know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see how the DFS market reacts. We'll talk more about that on the DFS show with myself and Gary Hartman at 5 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, really high scoring environment too. And just got to shout out the Kings, man. The Beam team, last 5 games have 135.3, offensive rating. They're playing really fast. Lakers are scoring. They've got a lot of aspects of their defense, like bad transition defense for the Lakers when they're kind of cold. So the Kings could just score so many points. They're so hot right now, man. Light up the beam on the road.
All right, let's move to the doubtful and out tags. We should note for Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell is going to be out tonight. Unfortunately, we've seen a little bit of this during the course of the season with either Garland or Mitchell out. The other assumes a pretty big ball handling role, and Karis LeVert gets elevated in these situations as kind of the secondary ball handler. The difference now is they have another piece in the ball handling mix with Ricky Rubio kind of working his way back here. What are your thoughts on how Cleveland handles the absence of Donovan Mitchell tonight?
Yeah, so I think we're going to see a little more Rubio. We've seen his minutes get elevated to 17. I think it gets close to 20. JB Bickerstaff said they're open to playing three guard lineups, even when they had Mitchell. So getting a little more size in Karis LeVert, who they started the 3 before. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Rubio get a bunch of minutes. We actually just took an Isaac Okoro under, just crossing our fingers that Rubio gets to 20. I think it makes a ton of sense. You want more ball handling to attack this Memphis defense, which I'll talk about in a second. But yeah, we'll see if Isaac Okoro, who guards more of the slashy guys, they use LeVert as really a wing defender, and they've used Garland sometimes aggressively. Like they used him on Dame early, but they eventually switched off, went to Okoro. So we'll see if Okoro picks up a lot of defensive assignments there. But expecting big minutes out of LeVert. Really, really tough matchup for Darius Garland. The Grizzlies have the number 1 pick and roll defense per possession. They've been shutting off the water a lot of point guards lately. Dylan Brooks has been fantastic. He'll get that matchup. So kind of could see LeVert really getting it going. If he sees Bane or Ja, it would probably be Bane. I would assume Ja will get the Okoro matchup. And the front court guys are in a bad spot. I mean, the Memphis interior defense is ridiculously good. Best in the NBA in at rim points per possession. So sneaky LeVert spot just in terms of path of least resistance. But yeah, it's and I'm nervous that the Cavs can hang around, man. This Memphis team is
I think
rolling right now.
That's the bigger note, is the risk of systemic failure that we've seen with teams like Brooklyn yesterday. When you take out these big pieces, and the going into Memphis is not the spot you want to be shorthanded. Memphis is winners of 10 straight. I believe they've been playing incredible basketball, and they're the best defensive team in the league in terms of limiting high ceiling performances from a DFS perspective. So tough spot. I think we'll talk more about the ownership and stuff on the DFS show, but I think the Cavs are certainly going to draw some attention because of the absence of Donovan Mitchell. But there is risk there. Okay. Gordon Hayward and Cody Martin for Charlotte. Hayward's been getting the doubtful tag and then kind of ruled out pretty consistently for like 2 weeks now. It seems like Cody Martin's got the same doubtful tag. What are your reads on their availability tonight? And are either of them progressing to a point that you think we might see upgrades in the near future?
No. I mean, Cody was kind of described as a mild injury, but not great. So I think he'll probably miss more. No word. We never found out anything on Hayward when he was out for a while last time, that all of a sudden popped up with the midday Q tag. So that's probably what's going to happen again. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. But obviously, headline, Jalen McDaniels coming off career high 26 points in the matchup they needed him. They don't need him quite as much without really a big wing to defend. They actually mix up the matchups more than I thought. They put PJ Washington on Tatum a decent bit, but was still expecting to play a ton. Pretty consistent rotation minutes. Also worth noting, they went back. This is annoying for us. They went back to Mark Williams, and this is interesting. So he said he's considering even playing 3 centers today. I think he doesn't want to do that. I think he's going to just pick his spots when he wants to play Mark Williams. There's been times when, I can't remember who it was, but I was always tracking a similar situation when it was like 3 games on, 3 games off. So maybe he has something like that. We're gonna try track this pattern and see if it's Mark Williams again. I would lean Mark Williams, but it's pretty much just you can't really play it right now because we don't have any sort of pattern to go off of. To note, just ridiculous game environment. The Rockets defense has been steadily giving up jumper after jumper after jumper. They leapfrog Miami for highest 3-point frequency allowed in the season. They're like first or second or third in every jump shooting category, unguarded catch and shoot 3-pointers, et cetera, et cetera. So LaMelo bombing threes. Terry Rozier can get hot from 3. The guards are in a really, really, really big spot against this Houston Rockets defense.
You mentioned the interest in potentially playing 3 centers there. Do you think that would come at the expense of Mason Plumlee at all, or do you think Plumlee has played so well that his minutes are pretty secure regardless?
I think they're pretty secure, but I mean, if they're going to play 3, that certainly takes the ceiling off. I don't think he's there yet. That was just something he was kind of spitballing, but just something to watch
I
down the
think
line.
if they play three, they're going to do something where it's Plumlee's normal rotations, and one guy plays the first half and the other guy plays the second half with Richardson
Or play them
Williams.
together. They ran Mark as a 4 briefly in summer league and preseason 1
Yeah,
to 2.
maybe they have holes on the roster, so maybe. But yeah, I think Plumlee's minutes are pretty secure with how well he's playing. Okay, let's move over to the Rockets side of that game where Kevin Porter Jr. Did he get downgraded? He's listed as questionable. We have
He's
him.
questionable.
Okay. So Kevin Porter Jr. on the questionable side of things. What are your expectations on his availability tonight?
So we got the doubtful tag in the last game ruled out. That's usually a pretty good sign. He's got a good chance to play. This with a foot contusion, certainly not a thing that lasts too long on the injury report. So would expect him back. That would probably get KJ Martin to the bench. Would take a lot of ball handling away from Eric Gordon, who we were jamming overs on. He performed for us. So his role would diminish. Şengün is the interesting part because they really funneled offense through Şengün coming off a career game, 33 points. We'll see if he's affected at all. But I would expect KPJ back and probably pretty close to full. Foot contusion is not really a ramp up kind of an injury.
Yeah, this is a really good spot for Şengün too, as Charlotte's been vulnerable to opposing bigs and the types of bigs that are like Şengün. We've seen Jokic and Sabonis, and those guys put up really, really big performances. Guys who rebound the ball well, can play make as well. So it's a really interesting spot for Şengün tonight. He's been playing really, really well. You also noted in the doubtful out section the OKC guys on assignment. So you've been on Flight Tracker Watch, which Elon has suspended, but you're finding ways around it. So talk about the OKC secondary guys in the G League assignments today.
Yeah, so Lindy Waters and Oji Yumiyuri are listed as out for G League assignments. So, of course, I had to find out that their G League team is playing right now in OKC. Lindy Waters started, and as of like 15 minutes ago, Oji Yumiyuri wasn't in the rotation. So, again, they're in OKC. They're playing at Paycom right now, so very easy to upgrade them. Omiyuri probably getting upgraded here. I'll check in the next couple of minutes if he's playing. But there's something to keep an eye on. So you see all these out tags, but I could see certainly Eugene coming back.
Yeah, and an interesting game there against Indiana, team that struggled defensively of late. Herb Jones, doubtful once again for New Orleans there without Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson. Tough year for Herb Jones. What's your read on how the Pelicans continue to fill in the absence of all these forwards?
Yeah, not great. Getting a doubtful tag again. Looked like he was getting pretty close, so it looks like he's going to miss time. Certainly that puts Dyson Daniels in the starting lineup. Would probably get the Tyler Hero matchup. Would imagine Najee Marshall draws the matchup against Jimmy Butler. We'll talk about the Heat in a little bit. But pretty straightforward. Tough matchup for this offense. They've been one of the worst. They haven't played a lot of zone, but they've been one of the worst offenses in zone. And a matchup note that I added is Trey Murphy actually leads the team in percentage of possessions used. So his usage rate has been climbing in zone defenses. We know Miami, they were leading the league in highest 3-point frequency. Houston just passed them. Miami gives a lot of 3-pointers. I think they're leaning into Trey in the spot, who's got the coach buzz. We saw him shoot 14 times, including 8 3-pointers. That's pretty rare for him. So kind of a sneaky Trey spot. Bad matchup for CJ McCollum. This Miami Heat defense has been excellent against pick and roll defenders. I believe first in points allowed in pick and roll ball handling. Memphis first per possession. But pretty tough spot for CJ and Joval, who's also in a bad spot. Centers really struggle against the zone. Miami's interior defense is top 2 with the Bucks. So, role players may have to step up in this spot.
Yeah, also a very switch, like a team you would like to defend with switching, because Miami does a lot of dribble handoff stuff and stuff that's just really tough for screeners to go under. So it's a lot easier to deal with switching. So it's a spot that you might see a little bit more Larry Nance than Joval of late, even though Joval's been beasting. On the other side of that, you mentioned talking about the Heat. Kyle Lowry is listed as probable. He went through walkthrough. So they're as healthy as they've been. Lowry, Hero, Butler, Bam Adebayo. We haven't had a lot of games this year where all 4 of those guys have been healthy. How does this impact their rotation tonight?
Yeah, impacts it quite a bit. Yeah, he got upgraded to available after going through walkthrough, so it should be good, should be starting. He was really just rested for, quote, discomfort, so it's more of a management thing. Spoelstra kind of talked about that, I'd say about a month and a half ago that this could happen, so expect him back now. Minutes probably capped a teensy bit. We saw him play crazy minutes when Jimmy and others were down. So expect him held in check. And we are going to kick out for now Haywood Highsmith out of the rotation. They don't need an extra defender, I don't think. They've got CJ to worry about, and then that's kind of it. So I think Highsmith will be Caleb Martin insurance. Caleb Martin really rusty in his return, had a couple sloppy fouls that cut his minutes down. So I think that they'll keep Highsmith just in the back pocket if Capewood picks up fouls or doesn't look great, something along those lines. So I think he's projected out. Takes a lot of upside off Victor Oladipo. We saw Oladipo's ball handling really spike. Spoelstra talked a lot about that. Had the 10 assists in last game. And then Tyler Hero, I still expect him to have a pretty good amount of ball handling. He's been, quote, the drop killer, and we'll see a decent amount of drop with Jovel on the other side. So I kind of like the matchup for Hero. Also worth noting, he had a long rotation. You see the 31 minutes on the screen. But in the third quarter, he had pretty close to full rotation, which is usually an indication that he had a little cap on him here. Should be good to go for this one, probably full minutes there. Jimmy's been playing a lot. Bam been playing a lot, but Bam's assists have really cratered when Lowry comes in the lineup too. So a lot of moving parts here, but should see this kind of standard 9-man rotation with Gabe Vincent moving to the bench, playing the non-Lowry minutes, Strus off the bench, Oladipo, and then Orlando Robinson behind Bam.
Larry Markkinen expected back for the Jazz after a couple game absence. We've seen Walker Kessler just play incredibly well of late, and even in one of these games, Jared Vanderbilt moved to the bench for Walker Kessler in that starting lineup. So is that your expectation in terms of who gets the boot tonight in the starting lineup, whether it's Beasley or Vanderbilt here?
Yeah, it's got to be one of those two for sure. I would lean Vanderbilt. But yeah, I think they like Beasley in the first unit. Certainly don't need the size. The big wings aren't going to be out there. So I would kind of lean that direction there. But yeah, Walker Kessler, I joked on calling him Walter Kessler for Barbara Walters 2020 special. Just an incredible game against the Wolves. Big old revenge game after trading him.
Yeah, Wolves are down real bad. Other stuff to get to, the Pacers are, outside of being without Tyrese Halliburton, they're fairly clean on the injury report. We had those coach quotes from Rick Carlisle last game about them not wanting to play overlap, and sure enough, and Nembhard and McConnell overlapped probably more than they have at any point all season. McConnell went supernova in that game, but they still kept Nembhard in that one matchup tonight against OKC. We've taken a Nembhard points over that I'm sure is gone by now. What are your thoughts on a clean injury report outside of the Tyrese Halliburton issue for Indiana and how that impacts things tonight?
Trevlin Queen questionable, but interesting. Mentioned the coach quote saying they're not going to play 2 point guards, and I think that may have been the plan because they had Chris Duarte sub in early, and then they brought Jalen Smith and TJ McConnell in as the 6th and as the 7th and 8th man in the rotation, and then TJ just ran away with the minutes played, didn't sub out in the second quarter, and then he moved into the 6-man rotation, subbed in first, and then had a quick little breather to start the fourth, came back in and got a lot of overlap again. So somewhere in the middle, I think our minutes may be a teensy bit hot just because I'm worried that they kind of keep him limited, but matchup's really important to know. I think Nembhard's minutes are a little safer than TJ's in this spot, just because they really need an on-ball defender, and he's really the only guy they trust against a guy like SGA. They don't like Nesmith against a heavy ball handler. They're not going to play Ben Mather in that role. So the matchup's bad from a defensive point for him, but they need him really bad defensively. So I think his minutes could hold up there, which could affect McConnell. So I would expect Nembhard to beat McConnell minutes wise. Whether how much of those minutes he's going to get is kind of to be determined because we've seen such a mixture from Carlisle here. But feel pretty good about him getting upper 20s at least.
Yeah, I think the good sign on this whole thing for Nembhard is you have those coaching quotes, you have McConnell playing incredibly well, and you have Nembhard still at 33 minutes. If he was really determined to not overlap them with the way TJ McConnell was playing that game, it would be Nembhard's butt who's on the bench, and it wasn't. And so I think that's clear to me that if they're taking from anybody in that spot, if they do try to go back to that, the McConnell's more at risk. Now, if he goes back to straight no overlap, which we saw the game before when they each played around 24, certainly a risk. to Nembhard, and he could come down as low as like 25, 26. But you mentioned the matchup with SGA. This was similar last game with the matchup with Drew Holiday, and Drew was going off, so it didn't really matter. And that might be the case here too, that it might not matter. But I think the guys who are low key sort of at risk are more Neesmith and Mathurin, who Mathurin just has not played well in the starting role. Like all year long in the starting role, he's kind of struggled. So that's something to note as well. Other situations
and should
to
add
monitor.
too. I almost covered what SGA. They just don't send a lot of help. Big rim funnel. I'm not worried about the matchup against Andrew Nembhard. So I think SGA could really pop off if any keep it close. OKC's playing awesome right now.
They are in the play-in as of now. All right, other situations to focus on. A couple of back-to-backs. The Clippers are on the second night of back-to-back. They ruled out Paul George immediately after the game last night. They are going to travel with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and Luke Kennard. Ty Lue did not give commentary on whether Kawhi Leonard or Luke Kennard would play today. I find it very hard to believe that Kawhi Leonard would play. They've always talked about like later in the season, maybe getting some opportunities at back-to-backs, but he's been playing really heavy minutes of late. Things are starting to look good. I just don't even see any reason to risk it out there for him. So we've got him assumed out in our projections currently. We've got Luke Kennard assumed in. He had a workout pregame that Tomer Azerley tweeted that he had asked if it was a good sign for the workout, and Kennard had said yes. So I think there's a chance that Kennard's back. I don't feel super strongly about it, but we could see a really depleted Clippers rotation tonight in a situation where, it's just the second night of a back-to-back, a veteran team that's ruled out a bunch of guys already. They're without John Wall. So Reggie Jackson might have a minutes cap on him with how he's been playing of late. So what are your thoughts on the Clippers?
Yeah, on top of what he said, so Lou was asked about not having Kennard and playing Reggie and Norm together. Side note, Reggie Jackson hurt his back and is on a minutes cap, so would not be surprised to see him on the injury report as well. But yeah, I'm leaning Kennard not playing. We saw him not go through practice. He was kind of behind Paul George based on kind of practice reporting and so on. So I think he needs a little bit more time. I think Friday's a better target date, but we do have him in. We're not going off much. We may get that news in 2 minutes here.
I think we'll get
one other note.
3:30 would be my guess.
Yeah, there's a chance. There's a chance. But one other note. This is Galaxy bringing, and this is me shining right here, right? So the G League guys, they were on assignment yesterday. Didn't have them available. That's Brandon Boston's, Preston's, etc. They were. They did have. They did have Preston. I'm sorry, Brandon Boston. Brandon Boston. Sorry. Yeah. So they play in East LA. They play in Ontario. So they're playing Friday in Austin, Texas. The Clippers are playing in San Antonio, Texas. So I won't be surprised to see them, catch the same flight, go to Utah, and then go together to San Antonio / Austin. Is a little carpool, plane pool ride. So just something to keep an eye on there. If they do like crazy mass rest, Reggie, Kawhi, Paul George, Luke Kennard, maybe even Marcus Morris. We saw Morris miss a game over the weekend. Just something to keep an eye on there. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Clippers just sit everyone today. Yeah.
And that's a later game on the slate. It's a 9:00 Eastern game. So depending on when that news comes, there might only be 3 games left in the slate. It's certainly one that I'm sure people are going to be keeping roster spots available for, because there could be a lot of value open if Kawhi and Marcus Morris, if there's like mass rest here. So keep an eye on it. The Nuggets are the other team on a back-to-back. They're 10:00 Eastern start tonight against Minnesota. Jamal Murray and Bones Highland were both questionables yesterday that ended up playing. I would be sort of surprised if Jamal played tonight, just because he's questionable. He played fine. These did seem to limit him a little bit down the stretch in terms of keeping the minutes down around 30. They played Bruce Brown a little bit more to close in a game that was kind of teetering on blowout much of the fourth quarter. What are your thoughts on what we can expect to see later from a Nuggets injury report standpoint?
Yeah, I expect Jamal to get on there. Didn't quite. He had an early pop off to start the game.
Yep.
But after that, kind of dwindled. Got pulled out pretty early, and they didn't need him. So, he should get at least a probable tag, possibly a questionable, possibly an out. It is national TV game. Probably wants to play for that one. And we got Cam Johnson plans to make his return tomorrow. So that's interesting for the Suns. They need offense bad. Worst offense in the NBA the last month. But we'll keep an eye on Jamal. Obviously, that would mean Bruce Brown gets in the first unit there. We'll see if Bones gets managed off the back-to-back as well. But definitely something to watch for Jamal Murray. And we should note that Nikola Jokic missed the game for management, non-back-to-back road game. I think it was the road game factor. They have all these home games right now, so there's a chance Jokic is on there. And that was national TV too. I think
that was Friday. That was Friday. Against,
Friday national TV.
Plus.
Yeah, Clippers. Yep.
Yeah.
So that's something to watch as well. Maybe they're hating on ESPN. But
another thing to watch tonight is if Jokic does play. It's been a week since he missed a 2-point field goal attempt. So we'll see if he finally misses a 2-point field goal attempt for the first time in a week.
Ridiculous.
This is a guy who's averaging like 30 points during this. Like it's really outrageous what he's doing there. Okay. I think that'll do it. I know it. Well, how badly do you want to talk about Grizzlies G Leaguers? Because I know you have a note there that I skipped over. Is the minutes restriction? Is the minutes restriction preventing you from tackling Grizzlies G Leaguers, or do you want to go into it?
I can go into it. Yeah, they're healthy, man. They got the full team pretty much. They're freaking balling, and yeah, I cover boyed John Morant, which is you think Cleveland defense they were like hanging number 1 for a bit, and I cover boyed him. But yeah, let me share some notes. Their pick and roll defense. I talked about this with McCollum when he flopped, but they were giving up pick and roll plays at like a ridiculous rate over 5 games. John Morant leads the NBA in pick and roll possessions, like 14 per game. I don't think taking Donovan out and putting LeVert in really fixes that. So I think that it kind of matches up where the projections and a lot of stuff won't pick up that the pet play from Morant is the weak spot for the Cleveland defense. So really, really leaning into this one for play type and being full synergy stat boy, nerd boy. But I kind of think that John Morant could have a really big game that a lot of people may not see coming.
That is not what I expected you to be doing on the injury show, using your time for flag plans of sorts.
Got to.
I'm sure we'll be happy.
Desmond Bain lights out all of a sudden, 66% on his last 27 3-pointers, I believe it was. With 4 feet or more room, he's been just on fire. So I'm a Grizzlies fan apparently now.
As you can see, the minutes restrictions on Mike Gallagher will not prevent the hot takes from coming.
Yeah, I'm the Bogdan Bogdanovic of minutes limits.
All right. As always, support the people who are supporting us. This show is brought to you by our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. They have daily NBA snake drafts for money running in addition to many formats of NFL playoff contests still running for huge prizes. If you're playing NBA Pick'em, you can use our tools to compare ETR projections to their fantasy Pick'em games. If you haven't signed up for Underdog yet, use promo code ETR for a matching deposit bonus up to $100. That's promo code ETR at underdogfantasy.com. As always, we will be behind the paywall at 5 o'clock Eastern today. Myself and Gary Hartman will be walking through this 9-game slate in advance of the 7:30 lock tonight. If you are not interested in giving us your hard-earned dollars and subscribing to our content behind the paywall, we ask to consider giving us your hard-earned clicks. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, get notifications whenever we go live. Also, smash that like button and help circulate this content within the algorithm. As we always say, help us help yourself by helping us feed our families by feeding that algorithm, and we'll help feed you the top plays and injury information for each and every NBA slate Monday through Friday. We will see you tomorrow, unless you are joining us tonight at 10 o'clock Eastern at playback.tv/ETR for a League Pass hang. Again, if you have League Pass, you will be able to follow us watching the games and sweating props, DFS results, late game actions, probably give away some live bets if any come up that are interesting to us there. Hopefully we'll see you tonight. If not, we'll see you tomorrow at 2 o'clock Eastern for another edition of Established Run's NBA Injury Report Analysis Show. Take care, everybody.